Hi, and welcome to the Handbag Designer 101 podcast with your host, Emily Blumenthal, handbag designer expert and handbag fairy godmother, where we cover everything about handbags from making, marketing, designing, and talking to handbag designers and industry experts about what it takes to make a successful handbag. Welcome, Julie Deane of the Cambridge Satchel Company, founder, creator, give birther to her, CBE, all the way from Quince country in the United Kingdom. Welcome, Julie. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for inviting me along.
As I was saying before, you commented on a post of mine on LinkedIn, and that's just a welcome. That's an invitation for us to be best friends forever.
Absolutely.
So you had mentioned that someone is collecting quince from your garden today?
Absolutely. So I live just outside, it's Cambridge. It's one of the little villages around Cambridge.
So you still stayed there, huh?
I split my time between here and the west coast of Wales, which is where I'm from originally.
No accent. How'd you lose the accent?
Oh, well, I've been in Cambridge for such a long time, I think. But the minute I go over the bridge, it comes back. So it's it's a bit of a funny one. But in Cambridge, I have a very, very old house, and there's a quince tree in
What's a quince for people who don't know?
Quince is, these fruit look like a cross between a pear and an apple.
Got it.
And they are really big, and they are rock hard and really heavy. And one fell on one of my dog's heads 2 years ago and completely stunned him for a while. Then they've never really caught on as a fruit to eat or do very much with, except there is a small group in my village Facebook gardening group that like to come and pick the quince every year.
Listen, we have a Facebook group in the building I live, but there's actually two because the two admins broke up and they blocked each other. So now we have two groups. It's kind of funny, but sad at the same time.
Do you have
to double post. You have to double post. It's very time consuming. I want to ask you something because there's so much to unearth here. Do you get bored of telling a story? Is it old for you at this point?
No, it isn't for me because I don't know. It's still so vivid. Even the very beginning in many ways feels like just yesterday.
I get that. I so get that. Like, I know your mom, Frida was an integral part of the beginning. And it sounds like she was part of also helping you with your kids. Yeah. So had that too. So when I started my handbag line, my mom was driving me back and forth to JFK to pick up my shipments. And I was opening the boxes with her and only to get her facial expression of, do you really want to do this? Because this is not good. So, it's the passive aggressive. I'm here to support, but are you sure this is what we're doing?
Yeah. And the things that, my mum would say sometimes if somebody came for an interview and I'd maybe finishing off some call or something, and I'd look out, and if I saw the journalist speaking to my mother, my heart would sink. I'd think, oh my gosh, what is she saying? Oh, no, this is awful. I remember there was a magazine came in and they said, what can you tell us about your daughter? What can you say about your daughter? And my mum, of all the things that I would have loved her to have said, she said, she's not stupid.
Yeah.
That's it? Really?
Yeah.
That's it?
Yeah. Yeah, she was on payroll with you. You should have had an HR chat with her about that after, here's the do's and don'ts of what we say and don't.
Put her off at the knee. My gosh, what on earth? She's not stupid. That's it. Could be on my gravestone. Here lies Julie Deane. She wasn't stupid.
Comma. Yes.
Right.
Comes. Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
Oh my God. Well, I think I've read every interview you've ever had. And as I was saying, I believe there are more people like you, I would throw me into the conversation, but I never reached the level of success because you found a hole in the market and was able to capitalize on it. And I believe, creating something, it also comes down to timing, right? Timing and hustle. So you found something at the right place at the right time and had the hustle and need, and therefore said, it's so interesting when we're put into these positions because we really, even the most risk averse people, when you're in it, you don't even see what the downside is.
No.
Like, it's like, okay, this is what I'm doing, the end.
Yeah, that's all right. And this might be quite sad, but I honestly love the satchel. It is like
it's spectacular.
It is my favorite bag ever because I'm not a tremendously fussy person.
Right.
I'm quite a practical person. And so I don't want to be messing around looking for goodness knows how many pockets or zips or, I just can't be doing with it. And I was astounded when I couldn't find a traditional school satchel for my children because there were all these bags that had zips that would fall apart or they weren't well made or they looked really grungy. And I had my satchel from the moment I started secondary school, so about, 10, 11, right up until the end of university. And it just always was there. It would stand up and I could fish things out of it. It didn't sort of disgorge its contents all over the floor. It was just always something I didn't have to think about. So with Emily and Max, I just thought, of course you're going to want to have a satchel. And it didn't occur to me for a minute that I wouldn't be able to just find one.
Right. Of course.
Really easily because it's this traditional British school bag. And they were...
in a traditional British school.
Yes, very, very traditional. And I was really shocked and sort of horrified when then I couldn't find one. So,
you said a lot of interesting things. Number one, it stood up. Now, we know from the do's and don'ts of handbags and merchandising that unless the bag stands, it will not be successful. Number one. Number two, if you had the same bag standing the test of time, it was a good, solid cow leather.
Yeah.
And it was a stodgy color. And it had the flap with the little wheelie buckle doodahs, and it could stand the test of time, much like the origin of what Coach was, that they used baseball mitt leather back then.
Yeah.
And not so much now because everything has to move a lot quicker. But the fact is, I know that this was born out of necessity for twofold. One, you couldn't find it. And two, you wanted to put your kids into public school, which we call private school here.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And so if I hadn't had this need of, oh my gosh, how am I going to make school fees? How am I going to pay for my children's education? If I didn't have that pressing need, then maybe I would never have done this, but it was literally a list of what can I do to make enough money to make sure my children get a good education, because education is just so important. It's freedom. It's been so important for me. And that is the gift that I wanted most of all to give to them.
My grandmother, who was a Holocaust survivor, always used to say education's the lightest baggage you'll ever have to carry because, she was forced to work at 15. So it was, obviously different times. And, you don't appreciate that, obviously, when you're a child. But having a couple degrees here and there, you're like, oh, yeah, everybody needs to keep learning. So I understand from where you're coming.
Different ways of learning, too, because when I think of all the things I learned during the whole process of founding and growing and running Cambridge Satchel, I had to teach myself so many things.
Yeah.
Goodness for YouTube. Thank goodness. Even things like how to use these machines when you put the nylon strapping around boxes, with a little metal clamp on them. I could buy the machine, the gizmo that sort of does and puts the staples on them. But how do you use the blinking thing?
Right.
But thank goodness, there's a how-to video for just about everything.
There is now. When I started, there wasn't any videos. So it was like you'd get a box and you'd be like, well, what the hell am I supposed to do now?
Yeah.
So now you were married at the time.
I was. Yeah.
So I find this interesting. And if you don't want to speak about that, I totally understand. But was it a pushback? And what was the response internally? Because I know a lot of people, when they start something like this, of which they have zero experience and or knowledge, an interesting dialogue internally in terms of, okay, why are you doing this? Okay, I want to do this to pay for school fees. Does your child really even need to go to this precious school? And where are you getting the money from to start this? Like, so obviously you have to do everything yourself, even within this partnership.
And I think that it was made a lot easier for me because I started Cambridge Satchel with £600, so about $700.
Right.
Which I had organized a conference and been paid £600 for it.
And that was it. That was your seed money.
Seed money is, bigging it up a little bit, but yes, it was.
It was a tiny seed.
Yes. And so that was, the money that I had to gamble on this big dream because, yes, the outcome was let's get Emily and Max into a great school. But then it sort of becomes this huge challenge. It's, golly, I can do something that is going to be amazing. What if this worked? What if, because my dad was self-employed, and he had his own business. And I think that after I had stopped full-time work to be at home for a long time with Emily and Mac, and then it was suddenly this thing of, oh, maybe I don't have to work out how to get back into a traditional workforce.
Yeah.
Because if I try to do this, I can make it work better around the children. I can be there for school holidays. I can do school drop-offs and pickups, and I can be trying out something amazing, which means that I get to feel like I'm evolving as well, because they were 6 and 8 when I started Cambridge Satchel. And I would see with every day, they would be learning things. They'd be learning very early on. You've got the books, you're trying to teach them and help them learn to read. And then they're going to school and they're learning how to do lots of different things. And it's just wonderful watching them learn and grow and become their little people.
Well, you were an early adopter from a work from home mom.
Yes, exactly. Right? Yes.
Because
100%.
You were always working.
Yes.
But you were with them.
Yes.
So
with them.
Exactly.
And then it suddenly starts as they become that bit more independent and start enjoying spending time with people their own age and doing their own sort of things. Then suddenly there's this horror of, being at home with the children was fun when it was being at home with the children. But if the children are actually doing these other things now, I'm still at home. What am I going to do that's going to keep my mind active, that makes me feel that I'm not just left standing while
to have a sense of purpose.
Exactly, yeah. Mm-hmm. And so suddenly the prospect of, I'm going to start a business. Well, that's exciting. That's really exciting.
Well, again, it's so fascinating. So you came up, you saw this hole in the market, not even realizing that it was perceived as, from even a marketing term, a hole in the market, right? Like what's missing, defining all that, because everything you've done from a marketing angle was done, right? You found something that was needed. It satisfied a need and a want. You couldn't find it. You started looking around, and then you found this one shop and you stocked them for them to share their manufacturer. And that is actually in my book. I speak about that it's almost like babysitters, that when you find a good babysitter, you don't share their name or information. So you have to really come up with something clever to get people to share who their source is.
Yeah.
And then you show up at said source's door saying, we have to figure this out right now.
Yeah. And, yes, that shop, let me get rid of all of those that are things appearing on my screen. Yes. And it was this finding somewhere that somehow had managed to find real authentic school satchels. Because when I started looking for manufacturers, a difference between handmade and artisan.
100%.
And the minute somebody describes themselves as artisan, I soon discovered that meant that they were going to be way too expensive for me to ever use to sell on. It's never going to happen.
Yes.
And they're never going to be able to make them in bulk. Now, I'm never going to be able to sell to all of the school children in Britain because there's some man in his artisan shed doing
Yes.
artisan things.
Yes.
And making a bag every 2 weeks.
Correct.
That would never, and that hadn't occurred to me before I went on the hunt for a manufacturer.
Yeah. It's a learning curve because you find someone who can finally make it. Yeah. And then you go and you get orders against it. And then you realize, oh my God, it will be at least 6 months before I get my production from said person. And then you go and bother them. And then because you're pissing them off, they want no part. Like, I'm going to put you at the bottom of the list because you're really irritating me.
Yes. Although in my case, it worked the other way round. I think that I had nagging down to such a fine art.
Oh, well done.
that he was willing to just make me a batch of these things because he was so sure
that you'd go away,
that there's no market for it. And it was literally like, if I make you 6 of these things, will you just leave me alone? It's like, yes, I will. Yes, I will. And it catapulted me to the front of his queue because he was so certain that nobody wanted these things, because his factory in the north, in the UK, in Hull, they used to make satchels back in the 1970s when, you know, everybody had them. And if you look at the sort of Narnia films and all of those, they were their satchels. His company used to make those then. And he said, no, nobody wants them now.
They're not on trend.
I think you're wrong. I think you're wrong. And he said, look, I'll make you these 6, but you have to just go away and stop pestering me. And it's like, well, yeah, but if this works and I'm right, then I could be your best customer ever. And he was so certain that it wasn't going to work. He said, yes. Well, then you can come back to me, which was great because then I could
God
to him. Thank goodness. Yeah. But yeah, he would literally do anything just to make me stop.
Well, I'm sure we talk about this, that when you come in to speak to a manufacturer, the more green you are, the less they want to talk to you and the more they'll charge you. Right. It's that, like, you don't know what you're doing, extra cost. You don't understand construction or how a bag is, the anatomy of a handbag, the silhouettes, all you knew, you know, like, it's a satchel. And here he saw this mom with a big dream and a bag. And it's like, yeah, I don't know. You should just, this is cute. Good for you.
I think I was really, really fortunate that my first manufacturer was absolute salt of the earth, one of the nicest men ever, you know, and I kept in touch right the way along, and he came to shop openings and everything, and just the most...
You must have kept him in business.
Honest. I put so much his way that he couldn't keep up. And then, you know, I had to find a second and then a third, and it sort of went that way. And those first 3 manufacturers were the most decent, honest men that you could ever come across.
Was he insulted that you had to go get another, or he knew you needed to?
No, because I said to him, look, can you please just, I need way more, because he could make up to 250 bags a week. And in the beginning, I thought that would be more than anybody would ever need. I would never need more than 250 a week. And then it was growing, and I really needed a lot more than that. And so I said, look, can you please just take on more people? And there was a point at which, I think because of labor laws and the way the factories are set up in the UK, there's a point at which you decide you're either stepping up. It is a big step up.
Yeah.
And to be for each of the 3 first manufacturers, it always happened around the 200 to 250 bags a week. That was the limit. After that, they needed a special first aid person, and they needed a special
insurance and overhead.
Everything changed. And so I tried to get him to take on more people and to expand and to grow. But he was very, very honest and just said, look, at my stage in life, I've seen stressful times. I don't want to expand the factory.
Amazing.
So it was like, well, okay, if I always give you enough to keep you entirely busy, would you mind then if the excess I take to somebody else? And so he said, no. And he helped me find another person to take the next layer.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And then they spoke to each other often to make sure that things like the rivets were always the same.
How lucky.
Came from the same place. And I think some of that, I hope I'm not flattering myself by saying that some of that was just because of the transparency
of you.
I spoke to them with.
Right.
And it was always, I have to do the right thing by Alec because he was the first one. He started. So he gets the first 250. After that, this is what I need. And then it happened again, that I was now on 500 bags a week. It wasn't enough. We needed to find another one. And I found a very, very colorful character based in Norfolk, a fantastic man who sadly passed away about 7 or 8 years ago. And I said, look, this is the way it works.
This is how we are doing business.
This is how it works, and it just means that if one of you then are short of rivets or there's a problem, you haven't got enough thread of a particular color, you can form a sort of like a
alliance,
little alliance going there. And you can talk to each other and you can complain about me or whatever. You can do your own thing. And they got on really well. And that was absolutely fantastic. With those three, that is the dream, that you find people like that.
Amazing. But
I only now, looking back on it, realize how lucky I was to find.
And that's it. Yeah, that's touched by something. I have a couple questions. So, one, how did you go about selling? Were you selling from your kitchen? Were you going to mom's door to door? Were you doing school fairs? Or were you like, okay, I'm going to start going to local boutiques? And how, within this journey, because we have more to cover, did you say the production must stay in England? How did you, let's tackle the first one.
For me, it was always important that production stayed in the UK, in Britain. It wasn't in England because I had 2 manufacturers in England and 1 in Scotland, but it was all British. And that made it easy for me because I could...
You could control it.
I could phone them up without a time difference. We all spoke the same language. And if things really came to a crunch point, I could always get in my car and drive and be there, that same day or the next morning. It made things very, very simple for me, I think. And also just things like, when I was paying them, we're all being paid in pounds. There was no currency issues. There were no customs declarations. That was all very easy. The selling, I had read a book, Guerrilla Marketing.
I have it up here somewhere.
Book. But it's great. I liked it. And in there, it sort of said, you have to do your marketing in different ways.
Mm-hmm. Ambient media, guerrilla marketing. Yep.
You really have to different ways. And so I thought, I've got to sort of approach that. I'd made these funny little flyers out of Word. And then, you get the guillotine and so and I did all of these flyers myself. And then I found loads of free directories because I needed to be mentioned in lots of places because otherwise, Google doesn't see you. So
this is vintage SEO.
Vintage SEO.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And then you never link outside. So it's like a cul-de-sac,
Right.
You just always try to get somebody to mention you or listed on anything, but you never link out.
Right.
Because virtually everybody's website was better than mine. So I didn't want anybody leaving my website ever.
I remember the vintage Cambridge Satchel Company's website because I kept notes. My template to my book was like I was teaching a class on how to launch a handbag line when you're not trained in design prior to me even having a real business because they found me talking about it. And one of those organizations that have learn how to make a handbag line. I mean, I was in the same booklet. It was called the Learning Annex. And they'd have those bins on the street that you could get outside, your pharmacies and so forth. I mean, I was in one on the same cover as Donald Trump where it was learn how to sell real estate. I mean, that's how old school we're going. And they would take the handbag designer flavor of the week. But because I was keeping notes, I had a syllabus, I had resources, I had recommendations, I had designers to follow, and you were one of them. So
my very first website, when you have £600 as your seed fund,
yes,
you don't really have much of that to spend on a web designer.
Right.
And this was 2008.
Yeah.
And so I thought, I'm just going to have to teach myself, how hard can it be? This is one of the sayings that usually comes before some disaster, but how hard can it be? I can do this. And so I took a free Microsoft course, free online course over a couple of nights, and then came up with this website that was the very first one.
Oh my God.
You'd go to sort of PayPal, and you'd have to highlight all of the code for a button, and then you'd embed the code.
And each color was its own SKU.
That's right. And then and then you've got the button, but the buttons somehow don't want to align on the website.
Yeah.
Sort of kind of thing. And so, I went through all of that. But when you do go through all of that, you have such an understanding of your business, of every part of your business.
Yeah. It's so interesting because most people now are so quick to outsource. I need a salesperson. I need a publicist. I need a designer. It's like, no. You have to learn how to make everything from start to finish. Even if you do it poorly, you need to know. So when you hire people, you know what they're doing wrong.
Yeah.
Even from a salesperson, and you're like, oh, well, did you hit up these stores? No, why not? I go in them. I'm still doing it. Did you reach out to these editors? No, well, I know they cover stories about female founders, handbag, collared bags. Like, why aren't you? So, and then you end up doing all the heavy lifting yourself anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And when you have people join you, it's very different. They're on their own career path.
Right.
Whereas for me, this was just something I absolutely lived and breathed and loved and thought about constantly. I wasn't thinking, how long do I need to stay here before moving to my next bigger job?
Yeah.
And then moving to... So I wasn't out to make a name for myself in web design. I was just out to sell these bags, and it was like, okay, this seems to be working. I'll sort of move on and try to look at something else. But that is the thing, when you learn to do every aspect of it yourself. I remember, because the bags, I wanted people's initials on the bags because there's a small little card holder at the front.
Right, where you can
children sometimes used to put their names in the card holder at the front.
Right.
And then I think, as a mum, I don't want my children's names to be on the bag that's visible from, what if some creepy person says, oh, hello, Emily, because they can read it on the front of their bag.
Exactly.
Don't need that. But I want a way to tell the bags apart. Let's have initials embossed on them. That would be nice. And the first embossing machine I got with a grant. And the person came over from Germany. It was a German machine. He didn't speak very good English, which is very unusual because,
For Germans, forget it.
They also people can speak English.
They're very organized.
Just about anybody, they're fantastic. He didn't speak English. I speak no German. And so it was all done through sort of like...
Here, you do this, do that.
You do this, and then you go, no, it's 999 or something like that. Oh, no. Let's try something else. And then we'd all sit and have a biscuit and try again. But, that's how I learned to do embossing from him. And I embossed all of the bags.
Personally?
Yes.
Yeah.
For a long time. And even after the New York Fashion Week times and the Google times, when we would have a flood in at Christmas time, I never felt able to ask anybody to work between sort of 10 p.m. and 3 a.m. embossing bags.
Right.
So that was my slot. I would do that, and I would emboss between 10 and 3. So when people came in to pack, they'd have a load ready to go.
Were you out of your home by this point?
That was when we were in the first premises. And to anybody starting out, I would say the less you tie yourself into long-term things, the better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So my first premises was like I had to give a month's notice. If things went badly, I would give a month's notice. And so I knew, that's the worst that can happen. That is what it would cost me if I had to suddenly...
I'd lose 1 month's rent. Right.
Exactly. Whereas often it can be a 6 month or a year's sort of...
Yeah, you'll eat that money and lose it.
Exactly. Yeah. And the more you can avoid those kinds of things, I think the more creative you're still allowing yourself to be, because the less scared you are of what you have to meet.
How did you handle sales? I mean, the fascinating thing about your brand is that all the silhouettes, they were not cousins. They were siblings of the same parents. And typically when people develop, it's like you could tell they're all related because there's a story, but yours were like straight up same DNA. You know, the brothers and the sisters were mating and giving birth to the same child. So
I know,
in a different color. So how did you handle sales? Because I'm sure there were plenty of people in your ear saying, you should do this and you should do that. And you're like, no, we're keeping the same bag. That's it. We can make it bigger. We can make it smaller. We could change the strap shorter. We can make it longer. So how did you handle door to door and D2C, as it's called now, but you were selling online? Because back then, retailers were a little offended if you sold more on your website, whereas now they want to make sure you can sell on your website before they even pick you up.
Yeah. And I think that, well, first of all, because the bags, the only thing defining the different bags was the size of the bag, that was a real issue when it came to taking the photographs for the website.
Oh my God. Yeah, of course.
Because, I mean, I'm sure that we've all bought something online and then when it comes, you think, what is that?
It's so small. Yeah.
What's that? You've bought something of, like, I bought this thing of this weird, it's a bit like a meat flavored yeast paste bovril that British people either...
Was it like a sack?
And it was just sort of like the size of a motorbike helmet. I was expecting it to be something I could put on the shelf, but it would be small. I had a year's supply. I had the industrial size because I can't tell on the screen. And that was an issue that I really faced with the satchels. They all look exactly the same.
Right.
So in a way that at the time seemed perfectly like the commonsensical approach,
right,
I thought the answer to this is obvious. With every bag, I'm going to take it photographed next to a banana, because everybody knows like the size of a banana and they can see how much bigger these bags are compared to this banana.
I did not know you had a banana measurement. That's amazing.
Well, I thought it was...
I never saw that in any of your interviews. This is amazing. I'm glad I got a nugget that no one else did.
Yeah, it seemed like such an obvious workaround. I look back on it now and I think, actually, it's probably a bit insane, but it was a very early banana. I am going to have a banana because that's how people can tell the difference in sizes.
Oh my God.
And it's just the things then, like the strap sizes. I know now you're supposed to be so careful about how you refer to people, and
body type and so forth,
and all this kind of thing. But it was sort of like, there are two strap sizes. There's one if you're 5'6" or less. There's one if you're 5'6" and a bit and more. That's it. It's long and short. That's it. That's all it is.
Yeah.
It just seemed a lot easier than when Cambridge Satchel grew and we had all the things that a proper handbag brand has. You've got the merchandisers and the e-com team and all this kind of thing. And then suddenly it's like things become so much more complicated.
Is it frustrating for you to see?
Yes, massively frustrating. To have SKU codes that I couldn't understand. I couldn't look at and understand, because for the first 5 years,
it was all you.
I just had a code. It was
1, 2, 3,
like 11. If it was an 11-inch bag and it was red and it had a shoulder strap, not backpack straps, it would be 11RS.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
You look at the code, you think, yes, 11-inch, red, and a shoulder strap. And it was so easy. And then in later years, there'd be things like, oh no, well, we can't sell this straight away because we haven't generated a SKU code. And you think, how can this be?
Right.
What color is it? What size is it? Backpack straps or shoulder straps? And it is frustrating when a company scales and complexity just really, really takes over.
I mean, you had the gift and the curse of you came up with something people wanted it. Lots and lots of people wanted it. And then before you knew it, you were dealing with one of your factories started selling knockoffs, right? If I'm not mistaken.
No, you're correct.
So you had to chase after them, which is every brand's fear. But I always pad that with no one's knocking you off unless you're successful. So don't lose any sleep on trying to tell a factory not to knock you off because you need their help at the same time.
Whereas I had a very different, the one that was doing the knockoffs was the one that was doing the volume production.
And you needed that.
I really needed that because it was the New York Times had called us the street style.
The it bag.
Right. The it bag. And instantly I had 16,000 bags on back order.
From what?
From the website.
No, but like how many were you producing before at a comfortable level? Like how did that moment give you could manage production prior to that
yes,
piece?
I could manage it because I had my 3 manufacturers making between 200 and 250 bags a week.
So you had about 2,000 bags coming out. This New York Times thing hits, and all of a sudden you have your tipping point moment. So you had to run and find a new factory quickly.
Exactly. Yes. A big factory that could really cope with volume while still keeping my 3 original manufacturers happy and busy and completely at capacity. And so even doing that was quite a bit more juggling than I ever anticipated.
Right.
But then finding out that the new ones, the ones at scale, within 3 months, were taking, a lot of the leather that I was buying the raw materials and knocking off the bags because they knew that there was this huge delay and backlog and people wanted them and whatever. And I was making at the time, the hardest thing really at that time was I was also in my 3rd Paris Fashion Week for Comme des Garçons. So I was making bags for Comme and they were being made at this new place.
Were you designing them as well? Yeah. You were private labeling handbags for them, or it was a collaboration?
No, it was a collaboration. I know that I can never work with somebody I don't trust.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the definition of...
Did you know going in that you didn't get the good feeling, but you had no choice?
No, I had the good feeling. And that's what's so awful. That is what is so awful. I had no clue of what they were planning or plotting or doing. It was one of their employees that phoned me and
told you.
Yes, and told me. They said, "Oh, are you the lady with the boxer dog that comes to the factory?" Yes, I am. "Oh, I can't sleep at night because this is what's happening. We're making copies of the bags. They've got a different name on them. They're being hid in a lockup across the road." I had no idea. And the other one who was very, very canny, she's so sharp, was Sasha Wilkins. Fantastic. She was blogging at that time, Liberty London girl. And
I remember that.
Yeah, and she had sent me a note and said, "Oh, you sent me bags in the past that I've really loved. You've changed your name?" I said, "No, I haven't changed my name."
Wow.
And they had sent her a bag. And so it was between...
Wow, they were moving fast. If they were sending to influencers, they came to play. That wasn't let's just make some money on the side.
Yeah. No. This was really from, I think, day one. Then when I had the phone call from someone that actually worked at that factory, I thought, it's not someone copying my designs of my bags. It's actually my manufacturer.
Just out of curiosity, because one of my licensing deals went, as your people call, tits up. It was just horrendous that I got locked out of my own brand while I was still working with them, for them. They still legally had the rights and I had to fight for the rights to get back. And I was newly married and I knew the toll that it took on my relationship, because here I am. I define myself as this brand. This is my livelihood. This is all I know at this point. Whatever I knew is out the window. Now I have a partner / roommate who's seeing me lose my mind. I mean, it takes its toll, like all of this, because I'm sure at this point you were making considerable monies. It's hard for people to see you go through all this. Like, how can someone support you while you're like, I don't even know how to navigate this?
I think I was trying to manage all the emails coming in from the customers who were waiting for their bags.
You know, 16,000 of them yourself. I understand. I totally. I didn't fall for years.
You know, and it was, I remember using and discovering text expander, you know, where if you put in,
if you drag it down,
then all of a sudden, you know, it'll insert a paragraph. And I still have that on my phone sometimes. If I put something in and I've mistyped, and so there's this weird combination of characters, it'll suddenly expand it to, thank you so much for placing your order with the Cambridge Satchel Company. This whole paragraph, and I'll think, oh my gosh, that takes me back. Because when you're so deep in the trenches, you think that you should be able to keep up with answering all these emails. And it's your failing that you're not somehow able to. You know, I had this program then, because I can speak a lot faster than I can type.
Yeah.
And so I had this one where I could
text to talk,
just, you know, to get these things done. And I was thinking, this is wrong. I should be able to get back to all these people. I was getting like 2,000 emails a day. Of course, I wouldn't be able to get back and set up a factory, you know, and do all these things. Because I decided, I knew that I could not, the minute I found out what he was doing, I would not work with him anymore. And I pulled all the leather out of there, even though I still had this enormous backlog.
As a result, were you able to kill his knockoff business, or he continued? Because he didn't want to use any of his own supplies, I'm sure.
Yeah, and he continued. And I think it's really important when things are going very badly to identify what's going to get you out of the hole. What is going to get you out of that? And so at that point, it's not about worrying what he's doing or anger towards him or getting even with him or suing him, or that's not actually going to help.
It's not going to fix your situation.
No, the only thing that will fix it is either getting another manufacturer up and running really quickly,
right,
which would be very difficult, or starting a factory yourself. I just remember that moment when I went down to face him, to tell him I knew what he was doing. And it was scary. It was a really scary moment.
Do you remember the drive up?
Oh, I remember it so well. I felt
the pit in your stomach. Yeah.
So sick. I had one of the leather tanneries, giant lorries following because
to collect everything.
Collect the leather.
Right.
But I didn't know where it was going to go. And I was going there, and there was someone, I didn't have that many employees at the time. And there was this really young girl that was working for me, and she was great. And she was sitting at the side and she was saying, oh, I'm looking at Twitter, because it was all about Twitter back then.
Right.
I'm looking at Twitter and they're saying, oh, we're so busy with this brand, this knockoff brand he was doing. Oh, we're so happy. We're so busy. Keep your orders coming in, all this kind of thing. And I pulled up outside the factory. And when I went in, Did
he not know you were coming?
No, he didn't know I was coming. And I talked to him and I said, I know what you're doing. You know, I know what's happening here. And he just said, yes, but you need manufacturing and you're a stupid woman, know nothing about manufacturing. So you've got to suck it up. And I just thought, I snapped. And so I just thought, well, at that point I said, no, I am pulling out the leather. I'm not going to give you another order. And he said, well, you'll be back. You've got no choice. And stormed out. And I looked around and I thought, you know, if you can do that to your best customer, because I was easily his biggest customer, easily his biggest and best customer, what kind of person does that? And what do they like to work for? And so in a real sort of out of body moment, I remember, I almost feel like I could see myself just suddenly announcing very calmly, well, I'm really sorry, but there are no more satchels for you to make. I have thousands and thousands. At this point, it was closer to 20,000 on back order. But if you want to work for me at my factory, I would love to have you. And I thought,
who is this person?
What factory would that be? What is that? Which one are you speaking to? And I ended up taking all but 2 of his employees. But I really vividly remember driving back to Cambridge after that.
Who was driving the truck? You?
No, the man with the leather. I said, take it back to the tannery. I'll phone you with a location in the morning.
Just keep driving aimlessly. Go to a Tesco.
Just take it back to the tannery. Take it back to the tannery. Store it.
Who went in the back to collect everything? Did you physically remove everything?
No, the guys from the tannery. They knew, because I said to them, we're going down, you supply me with all this leather and you unload it there. So I need you to load it. Because I pay for it. It's my leather. I need
Right. Was your tannery in the UK?
Yes.
Is that?
Some of it was in the UK. And some of it then was from a guy who had some from Italy and from Spain. But he had a sort of there was a place where it all came in and it was stored. And
right.
I drew from that. So, thank goodness. But I remember driving back to Cambridge and thinking, I think it was shock really, because it was very, very calm and thinking,
what have I just done?
I'll be in time to pick Emily and Max up from school.
Perfect. As you do.
I'll make them their
dinner. Yeah.
I'll make them the tea. And then we can do homework. Once they've gone to bed,
I'll figure this out.
I'll go on Rightmove because I'm not sure what you need for a factory, but I'm pretty sure the first thing you need is a building.
Wait, so I want to talk a little bit about you sold a percentage or gave up a percentage. Was it majority, minority? And what happened to your local factory that you then created? How did all that evolve from there? Because then now you're really back in control. But I'm assuming it became way too much for, just Julie, mom, OBE, pre-OBE, pre-CBE, just still MUM. I'm sure people by this point, you were making so much money or getting enough attention that people were then approaching you and you were like, no.
So many. And it would always be these approaches like, oh, would you like to go for lunch and tell me your plans for the future? And I think, no, I don't want to go for lunch. I'm trying to set up a factory. What are you talking about? Time for this.
Right.
Go for lunch. I don't even know you.
Right, exactly.
And so it was very much one step at a time because I soon realized that I was going to have to use the money that the people had paid for their bags that I couldn't make to set up the factory.
That's terrifying.
That's scary. If you've never really, been in manufacturing, this wasn't the time for me to think, oh, I know, I'm going to get a property agent to locate a good factory with...
You were like, screw this, I need a building yesterday.
No, exactly. I thought, I need to employ the people that currently work for that horrible...
How are you able to pull those people?
I left my phone number and just said, if you want a job with a nice person, then phone me. And
that's amazing. That's savage. That's very savage.
It didn't feel savage at the time.
It's amazing.
Necessary. And all of those people, they knew what machine because I had always been decent and honest and transparent with my first 3 manufacturers. They were fantastic at that stage. They were saying, these are the sewing machines that you need. You need 2 types of sewing machines. You need a flatbed. You need a post. This is where we get them from. And I was thinking, I can't buy these machines. But it turns out it's just a bit like musical instruments. If your children are learning musical instruments, you can hire them and then buy them after a year or 2 years.
Right.
Walk off your...
I'm sure there are plenty of rental places that have industrial sewing machines just lying around.
Rental places. I still remember the flatbed machine was £23.40 a week. All of these sort of things that, like, the devil's in the detail. Yes, there's no detail I don't know about this business. So, it was an incredible time. But from having no factory and no premises to the first bag being produced was just over 4 weeks.
Did you move your office to that factory?
No. No, because I live near the children's school. I live in Cambridge. And the horrible manufacturer was down near Leicester. And so I had to search for premises within a sort of like 3-mile radius of his factory, because I needed people, if they could get to him to work, they could get to me to work.
Right.
So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's like, okay, I guess we're doing this next. So at this point, because like, honestly, we could talk all day. This is like my handbag crack. I'm living for this. You don't even know. These quince ladies who are coming can't hold the candle to this chat. Forget that. Oh my God. So people started to approach you to get a piece of this. How did you navigate that? Because then that got too messy and then you had to drive again, basically.
Yeah. So I had met some people from BDO, one of the sort of big accounting, audit, tax firms. I'd met them at something because I'd, by that stage, had won Entrepreneur of the Year for the whole of Europe.
I remember that.
Yeah. So there was some celebratory thing, and I met somebody from BDO that I thought, oh, you seem nice. And I called them and said, look, I'm getting all these approaches. I don't know these people. I don't know these funds. This is the kind of job that I don't want to take on. So I want you to help me just bring it down to a short list of like the best.
Vet them for me.
Yeah, the best 5. Who you think are a good fit? And then I'll meet with those 5 and then decide. It was all done very much from a gut sort of feel. There was one very, very good fund that has backed some great places. But I remember visiting their offices and it was so messy, I couldn't bear it. So I just can't do this.
My son, when he was in first grade or second grade, there was a little girl who liked him and he went over to her house for a play date and he came home and he's like, I just want you to know I will never marry her. And I said, okay, because she had informed them they were married and, as little kids do. And I said, all right, run me through. What's the situation? What are the new benchmarks? And he said, her home was so messy.
Yes.
She didn't clean her plates. Food fell on the floor. No one was scolded. No one tidied it up. And he's like, who lives like that? And he was 7. So, you got to go with like, this is how I run my home. This is how homes need to be run. Anyone that I'm going to be part of.
I just thought, this is going to be a true partnership with these people. I can't dread going to their house, to their office in London. I can't dread it. I can't think, oh my gosh, sort yourself out. This isn't going to work. Yeah, that's down to 4, and it was an interesting process. And again, another incredible learning experience. And I look back on it now and I think I did choose the right partner. But
for that time.
Yes, for that time, I chose Index Ventures and they are amazing, super smart, very on it, incredible. I really, really like them and I really respect them. But I didn't manage the process after the investment in a good way.
But you didn't know how.
No, truly. I didn't know how. And I let it dent my sort of confidence in my own ability. I thought I can found something. I don't know how to scale. These people know how to scale. And so the fact that suddenly there was money in the business, whereas before there wasn't, it started off with £600 and then it was like virtually everything going towards the school fees. And then it was having to set up a factory, without realizing or ever thinking I was going to set up a factory. And so there was never this kind of like feeling of, look at us, we're well off. Suddenly there was. And then there was the big hires that come in at that point. And I looked at those people and thought, they know what they're doing. They've done this before. I should defer to that. And I shouldn't have. It was wrong.
Know what? That is something that has to be learned. that cannot be taught, because I've outsourced enough people whom come in and you just assume they're experts as a result of their work experience, their title, their CV, their resume. And then they come in and you're like, oh my God, I still know more than you. I still need to get involved. And then by that point, you feel like, gosh, I've missed my window to start telling you what to do. So now I can't tell you what to do because now I don't want to ruffle and mess the whole system up that you put in place to theoretically help me. It turns into a whole cycle of like, you see things crumbling. Yeah. But I think also as women, I think by nature, we are, obviously those who are too difficult, then they're pain in the ass. Those who aren't are too meek. But you hired people that you authorized to come in and do this. So you don't want to be the one to break it, because then they'll come back on you. So then you're like in this, should I, shouldn't I? And then if I do, I'm going to step away and hopefully they'll take my feedback, and then they don't. And then it just turns into this hot mess of handbag soup.
And things used to be so easy.
Yeah.
My mum and I would pick a new color from a paint chart from a home supply place.
Right.
We'd look at that beautiful color. We can do that. Send it to the tannery. They could match it.
Yeah.
These new bags would come in that color. My mother would stand outside in the garden with a sheet. I would take a photo of the bag. I would then just use my Pixelmator, because it's cheaper than Photoshop, to sort of edit the photo. It would be up. It would be up and for sale within 10 minutes of that bag arriving.
Yeah.
And suddenly these things were taking months.
Yeah.
And product development. What's your inspiration? What do you mean, what's my inspiration? It's a nice color and it just feels right.
Yeah.
It's not, my inspiration this time is walking through the spice market of Marrakesh. No, this feels like a really great color for now. That's my inspiration.
Yeah. Because I know it will sell and I know you will like it. That is my inspiration.
Because I know my community, and these are the colors they love. They love bold poster paint colors.
Yeah.
They don't want to see these washed out, drab, muted shade. No, because other people can do that. Some people love that and they can buy from that other place. But we do bold, vibrant, energetic.
You got to know your community. You got to know, and you got to stand by. I am so appreciative of this whole learning curve that you're so generously sharing with us, because all of this information, you come in assuming you're supposed to do it this way. We need the black, we need the brown, we need the ox blood, we need this, but your community really might not want that.
No.
So stand true to that, because you know what they'll buy. And I hope by that point that, one has done enough ethnography and so forth of, I know what they eat, I know what they sleep, I know where they go out to dinner, I know what goes in their bag. As a result of me knowing who they are, I know what car they drive, I know how to design into their lifestyle and the colors they need that will make them happy enough to come back and buy another.
Vibrant, and the shops would look so vibrant. Yeah. And then suddenly there's like, what's the neutral in this collection? I don't know, because it's not something I would ever wear.
Right.
You've got a dark brown satchel there. Isn't that neutral enough for anybody? No, we should have like a cream. That's not practical. What, a cream? I'd never have a cream because it's going to get dirty. Clean. And nobody's going to want a satchel to wear to a wedding.
Yeah.
So we don't have to worry about that.
Oh my God, Julie, I've taken so much of your time. I would love to,
We can do a part two. Let's do part two.
I think we're going to have to, because honestly,
because the quince collectors are going to be baying at the gate.
I know. Okay, Julie, this is part one. Let's do a part two, because there are very few people I can talk to and have this kind of rapport where going through all this, who've sold their company, have taken ownership back, have sold it again, and then can enjoy meeting with the local quince ladies. So this is part one. Julie, talk to me. How can people follow you, or at least learn more in the short term? Because we're absolutely doing a part two.
Oh, yes, we must do a part two. So I am at the moment on a bit of a break. Where I am doing up an old house. But I'm thinking that maybe that process is something people would like to follow along with, because it's sort of fun process.
I think so.
So maybe I should just get active again on Instagram and start sharing this never dull journey that I have embarked on and sort of continue to embark on. So I think that that's probably the best way, is just through my Instagram. And
what is your Instagram?
It's just Julie Deane CBE.
It's Julie, Julie Deane CBE, correct?
Let me have a look on this.
And just quietly, what does CBE stand for and who gave it to you? Just want to throw that in.
So a CBE is a great honor. It's actually a medal. I have a medal.
Well done.
Yes. And he was then, Prince Charles, who is now the king, gave me my OBE, which is Officer of the Order of the British Empire. And I got bumped up to CBE a couple of years ago, and that is Commander of the Order.
And the Queen gave that to you.
Queen gave that to me just before she passed away, correct?
Look at you with getting all this stuff. I would keep that stuff in the background. Hang a medal, Julie. Hang a medal. Come on.
It's in the drawer upstairs.
I mean, I know you're British and nobody likes to show off and it's very antithetical culturally, but not everybody here is. Let the quince lady see it. I would wear it on a Tuesday.
Maybe I'll wear it when we do part 2.
I'm here for that. Listen, this is part 1. Yeah. Julie Deane of the Cambridge Satchel Company. Thank you so much for today. And
maybe by part 2, I'll even have worked out exactly what my Instagram is.
But you are available on LinkedIn, correct?
I am on LinkedIn, and that is Julie Deane CBE. And Instagram is the fun one. And that's the one that I want to start sharing all my crazy adventures while I find my next
chapter. Fabulous. Yeah. Thank you so much for being part of Handbag Designer 101. We will be here for part 2. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to rate and review and follow us on every single platform at Handbag Designer. Thanks so much. See you next time.